All right, everybody. It's Leeroy Gaming, and I am here today for you to share with you my review of the Outriders demo. Now, I've played the game for about 15 to 20 hours. I've tried out all four classes, played them to max level, messed around and kind of theory crafted a bunch of the skill nodes or skill tree nodes. And I got some feedback for you. Now, in this video, I'm going to be covering some things that other reviewers have really been not putting a lot of attention to. And I really wanted to address them here so you get a complete view of this demo. And of course, there'll be some things that where we have similar concerns. Now, as far as the content, I'm going to start by talking about the tone. We're going to be talking about graphics, bugs, gameplay and controls, specific feedback on the cover system, specific feedback on the various healing systems, and there are various, three to be in fact. And then I'm going to provide you a little bit of feedback on or commentary on skill and build options for your consideration, and then my final verdict. Now, also, guys, if you're new to my channel or new to finding my stream, I just started streaming literally about a week ago. I'm looking to interact more with my community. So if you want to ask, chat with me, interact with me, my goal is to be streaming every Tuesday and Thursday from 8:30 p.m. till 10:30 p.m. Pacific, and we'll see where it goes from there. My channel here is going to be Leeroy Gaming Stream, and I simulcast both on Twitch as well as on YouTube. So you can, whichever source you like, you can access it in your preferred method. Now, without further ado, let's go ahead and review Outriders, the demo. Now, right at the beginning, I want to emphasize something that hasn't been emphasized, I think, enough. And this may not matter at all to a lot of you, but for some of you, it will have a big impact potentially, and that is the tone of this game. This game, I want to right off the bat tell you, is not for kids. It may be colorful, for example, maybe very like Division-like. It's not hyper-realistic, but even within the first 3 to 5 minutes of the intro, you're going to witness like disembowelment, crucifixions, hangings, constant F-bombs. In fact, I don't think there's a single conversation where you're not going to have multiple F-bombs. Just heartless like executions, which actually makes me wonder if our main protagonist, whether he just has a really dark sense of humor or he's a bit of a psycho or sociopath, because nothing seems to like shock or impact him whatsoever. Now, for me, I don't judge. I get dark sense of humor. It doesn't bother me. But if you're somebody that's sensitive to that, or if you intend to play this around little kids, don't. Unless you want them, repeating the F-bombs every 2 seconds your way. And definitely would not recommend gifting this to a minor, for example. Let them stick to some of the other games. And again, when I'm talking about graphic violence and language, it's a different level than what you're going to find in any of the other looter shooters. So do keep that in mind. Now, to give you, for example, I want to give one example of what actually occurs in the game. There's a scene where you go on a mission where you're supposed to save one of the like lieutenants of one of the main characters that you interact with. So you find this individual. There was kind of like a collapse. You kind of bring him out of this rubble. They pull up another character that is technically from the opposing faction, and he just unceremoniously shoots him in the back and then drops a grenade to kill all his comrades down in the tunnel, even though they had together been surviving, and kind of makes a joke of it. And then 2 seconds later, he backs up and he gets assassinated. And our character's response is like, oh man, well, that was kind of a waste. Like completely just oblivious and makes a joke about it. So again, that kind of sense of humor, dark sense of humor. Again, some people will like it. Some people may find it offensive or irritating. So that may actually be something that kind of kills it for you if you care about the story and progress for it. This game doesn't take itself too seriously, but not only has a twisted sense of humor, it is, again, just very, very over the top with its violence, for example. Okay, so that is that. Now let's talk about graphics. This game will not blow you away from like the character models, for example. Uh, it's not as good as even like Gears of War 5, which has been out a couple years now. I think that game looks phenomenal, ultra setting. This one looks pretty good. It's got a little bit of the, the cartoony feel. It's not hyper realistic, but the area I will give them credit to is the special ability graphics. This is especially prevalent with the Trickster. She has this kind of bubble that she creates that slows time, and enemies go slow motion. So if you blow characters up in them, they'll like slowly gibletize and travel through it. Bullets go in slow motion. I mean, it's really like almost like psychedelic. It's very, very cool. And there are other kind of abilities that also have kind of cool effects. So they get extra points for the abilities looking cool, but just note that, some of the character models, they're not going to blow you away. The hair kind of physics, I don't know what you want to call it, on some of the NPCs, are just like, eh. So nothing too spectacular, but it does look pretty good. Now, with that being said, you may have performance issues on this game. And it's probably not because if you have a bad computer. Now, if you have a bad computer, you're going to be in trouble. I'm worried about the performance on this on old generation systems because I have a pretty beefy rig, and I even had slight issues from time to time. I've also seen other reviewers say the same thing, that they chug and situationally, and they have trouble keeping frame rates consistent. They may have 100 frames, then they'll drop to 50 or 60, which is insane. So this tells me it's about optimization. This game is not optimized. It might be the demo. It might get better by the live release, but I've already learned from too many games, too many looter shooters in the last year or two, especially if it looks kind of cruddy in the demo, I'm not holding my breath thinking it's going to get that much better. Again, it's not horrible, so I think it's passable, but expect it to launch without too much change. If they surprise us and they improve, awesome, but just have realistic expectations for that. So, next, let's talk about big elephant in the room when it comes to graphical issues. Number one, motion blur, and number two, shaky cams. So, yes, this game has excessive, some people will say excessive motion blur. Now, here's the thing. For how much I've heard other YouTubers talk about it, I would think it's the end of the world. But it's really not for most people unless you're super sensitive to it. By that I mean, when I was first playing, before I heard anybody's feedback on it, I didn't even notice it personally. It doesn't really bother me. I picked up on it. I'm like, not a big deal. But there's a psychological effect that occurs when everybody tells you something, you start to kind of believe it. So if you're somebody that's not too sensitive to motion blur, for example, don't let that eat away at you. Try it out. It might bug you a little bit, but you might be like me and be like, not a big deal after a minute or two. Now, in the demo, you cannot turn off motion blur, but they did state in the live game, you will be able to. So with that being said, motion blur, if that's an issue for you now, it shouldn't be the end of the world, but chances are, unless you're sensitive to it, it will probably not be a big element. Now, shaky cam, slightly different story as far as its permanence. I don't think they're going to be able to fix that because I think they would have to redo the actual cutscenes, which I don't think they're going to do. With that being said, yet again, while I picked up on it, it didn't really bug me that much. I mean, most of the time there's a lot of action. It's only kind of awkward when there's not that much going on and the shaky cam is still present. In those cases, it's a little annoying. But again, when I was first playing the game, didn't bug me that much. But I watched video after video and comments saying, "Oh, shaky cam, shaky cam." All of a sudden, psychologically, I was like, "Oh, this bugs me a little bit now." And then I stopped myself and say, "Actually, no, it doesn't bug me that much. It's not that big of a deal." So do note again, if you haven't played the demo, haven't tried it yourself, you may be getting all these things instilled into your brain if you just watch these reviews that it's horrible. Again, let yourself be the judge of it. You may not mind it nearly as much. Again, for me, it wasn't that big of a deal. Definitely not as much as a lot of people were making out to be. So that's that element. Now, as far as bugs and crashes, again, in my 15 to 20 hours of gameplay, I had 3 crashes. I didn't have any complete system crashers like some people reported. I just had kind of the game crashed, a little window popped up, said, "Would you like to send this report into the developer with the error, yes or no?" And I was just reboot the game rather, and went right back in without issue. So 3, I don't like crashes at all, but 1 every 3 to 5 hours, I dealt with it. again, the demo, I'm guessing this based off old source code. Those things, I feel like the crashes will be a priority for them to fix. So sooner rather than later, those will get probably minimized. But again, it's not like I had issues every 10 to 15 minutes or anything like that. Okay, next, gameplay and controls. The gameplay is very much like, I mean, I compare it to Gears of War. It's heavy. It has mechanics, and here's the controversial part. It's got like heavy cover mechanics, but as a lot of people mention to you, even the developers mentioned in one of their promo videos, it's like you're kind of at the same time told not to use cover, but yet there's some benefits to cover that not everybody is talking about, and I'll mention in just a second. So for 3 out of the 4 classes, so everybody but the Technomancer, basically there's almost zero incentive to use cover. And a lot of it has to do with the way that the zones are designed. I'm going to right now switch the camera mode to show you what I'm talking about. So let's go to live scene mode here. And this is me in game. Now, this is kind of a battle arena section. Now, if I go into the map system, we are right here. Now, the way this is designed is this is kind of the world design. You have your town here, and there'll be like a little corridor area that will lead into like a combat zone. And then there'll be a little neutral area where there's not much combat normally that separates, again, other combat zones. And it's always got a little transition. So you're transitioning from either a mega combat zone to kind of an open transition zone that's still very linear, but may have forking paths leading to different combat zones. But once you get into a combat zone, you'll be, more often than not, looking at something like right here. And I'm going to kind of spin around for you. So when you enter it, there are all these very obvious areas where say, hey, you can crouch behind this, etc. Now, how you enter crouching is very normal. You can run into or walk into it. And if you hold spacebar, you will go into cover the majority of the time if you're moving. Now, if you tap it, you'll sometimes mess up. Sometimes they'll like vault over. But this is not what the area, the problem is with the crouching. There are 2 problems with the crouching system. Number 1, you can't go around corners ever. Even if there's like a corner element. Now, you can go from cover to cover very easily. So right now, if you look at the screen, you'll notice that there's a highlight where it says space. You hold space bar, it'll fill in, and it will auto-run there. So you can go from cover to cover, you know, if it's within range, relatively easily. And that guarantees you getting into cover. Now, the problem is if you disengage from cover for any given reason and hit space bar, like I'm hitting space bar right now, and it wasn't going to cover. So I rolled into it once. Once I ended up like double tapping it and it vaulted. And then a third time, it actually went into cover. So it's not consistent. And sometimes you're in the middle of a big fight. You come up to shoot something and then you're trying to get back in. And this is what's happening. Right now I'm spamming space. I'm rolling. I'm not going to cover. I want to go into cover. And then finally, I just hit it again and it finally went into it. So the inconsistencies are the problem. Now, the other problem is that the enemies will swarm around you. So even though like in the middle of the firefight, you might have enemies that are just up in front of you, you're kind of posting up here, and all of a sudden you're like, wait a minute, where did they come from? They came from behind, they came from the side, and you're just getting blasted. So the game basically says, okay, we're incentivizing you to run around, slam things, shoot them, do all that stuff, especially since the other classes outside of the Technomancer, they're going to benefit from getting health from killing things in closer range. So the Trickster, you get shield and health when you kill things in close range. The Devastator, only health, but a lot of health when you kill something in close range. So both of those, if you're like in cover and shooting things from range, you're not going to be getting any healing back. Well, I take that back. You're going to be getting way less healing back. I'll talk about that in just a second as well. The difference is the Pyromancer can be kind of mid-range because all he needs to do, or she needs to do, is tag an enemy with one of the abilities. As soon as you get that debuff, and that could be through your melee attack or any of your abilities, now when those die, and it doesn't seem to matter, like somebody else could kill it, you could kill it from 50 yards away or close up, you will get the healing, which is why I kind of like the Pyromancer's healing concept the best. But where the problem becomes is with the Technomancer. Because for him, everything incentivizes so far in the demo playing from ranged because he gets these turrets he drops and he gets this ability here of like a missile launcher. And so it just screams, stay behind, let it kind of tank for you to grab attention and kill things. If you drop this down and you're running ahead, well, all of a sudden nothing's out of range. You're losing the benefit of that turret. So again, the game screams for you to stay back and hide. Yet, the system is clunky. I don't think it's a coincidence that before this demo came out, a lot of people were saying, oh my god, Technomancer looks the coolest, it's going to be my favorite class. And now, everything I read, it's the least favorite class of all the reviewers, it seems like. And a lot of the people, it's clunky, it's uncomfortable. Now, I'm going to be creating videos reviewing all of the classes, and I'll tell you this much. Spoiler alert, believe it or not, Technomancer is arguably my favorite class. Oddly, the way I think I'm going to build him solo play to level 30. And I'll discuss that in my individual videos. But early on, it is the most clunky. There is a way to play him effectively, and I'll be teaching you that in my other video. But just note, it's not a surprise that if you try this character first, you might be turned off from the game as a whole, because you're just going to constantly want to be going in cover. It's not going to, and it's going to be kind of counterproductive. So that's all I'm going to say about the cover system. And again, the gameplay, the shooting, I do want to point out, the ability use, the actual shooting is nice and accurate. It feels good. I actually love all the combat, and the skill use especially. Really, really like it across all the characters. Now, the other big thing I want to talk about that nobody's really covering to the extent it needs to cover is the forms of healing. Okay, everybody has 3 ways of healing, even though they make it sound like, oh, there's only one way really to heal. Everybody's got their unique way, and so it forces a certain style. Not necessarily true, even though each class will be better at a certain type of play style for healing. Now, it all begins with the unique healing styles. So, Pyromancer, again, you're going to tap things with your abilities, and when they die, you get the health back. Devastator, just kill it in close range and get it, get the health. Trickster, you get health, less health, but also a shield mechanism that's unique to her or him in close range. Technomancer's got a bit of a false advertising, because if you go, I'm going to go back to this to the live scene again to show it to you guys. If you go in the class section where it talks about the actual descriptor, it's saying healing mechanism. As the Technomancer, you will recover a portion of your damage you deal as health. Yet this is not a unique feature, because if you read the descriptor, and it's being blocked by the camera, it says basically all it does is increases skill leech by 15% and weapon leech by 15%, which is not unique. Every character, as I'll talk about in a second, can do that. What's unique to this character, and it's not mentioned here, is the skill. You don't unlock it, unfortunately, in the demo, but at level 13 you'll get it, and it's an ability that you use, and when you cast it, it's going to heal you, your turrets, and all of your allies for flat percentage of healing, no matter where they are. It's not range-based. You don't have to be close by. You could be on the other side of the map from everything I gather, and I've researched. You will just get a heal. That is technically the Technomancer's unique ability for healing. Now, the reason it's confusing is because the second way of healing, every class has the ability to stack skill leech healing and weapon leech. And respectively, it means for that percentage of damage, either via your weapons damage or skill damage, you're going to get that much life back. It just happens that the Technomancer starts with 15% in each category. So 15% of all damage you deal with guns and your abilities goes back as health. But even on this character, you'll notice as I mouse over here, you can buff this. So right here, even during the demo, you can increase your weapon leech by 5%. So right now, I have 20% weapon leech. But there's other elements like right over here, Vitality Magnet increases your skill leech by 6%. Now every character has that. If you choose those nodes, you can have your Devastator do the same thing. You can have the Trickster do the same thing. And so forth. They're just never going to have the same cap. They're going to just do less of it because they don't start with the base amount. Now, the Technomancer also has 2 other unique things. So they're going to have perks that increase their and the group's healing. So Doctor of Medicine increases all ally healing all healing by 20% for you and your allies. And they also have a gadget proc. When you use a gadget skill, which includes your healing ability, you and all your allies, no matter where they are on the map, increase their healing by 30%. So you add those two up, assuming it's additive, that's 50% extra healing. So they can super specialize. Now, there is a third type of healing that I don't think I've seen anybody talk about it. And this is why the cover system is not useless. When you go into cover, if you are below a particular threshold of health, you will heal over time automatically. And I believe the threshold's around 30%, plus or minus a few percent. It's kind of hard to read, but it's right around that range. So even let's say you're a Devastator and you're just getting bombarded by a boss from range, you can't get within range, you're at like 5% health, you're like, oh my goodness, how am I going to heal? There's no trash mobs around me, I'm going to die. No, get behind cover, you will heal up to that percentage. Now, again, coming back to the Technomancer, the master of healing, he gets this ability that at first confused me. Blur screen. It says your health regeneration threshold is increased by 20% of your maximum health. This is huge. This is that regeneration threshold we're talking about in cover. So the more your max health is, the more you're going to be able to, again, heal up while in cover. So this is especially important for the Technomancer because remember, I mentioned you're incentivized as the Technomancer, unless you go for a build that doesn't use any turrets, which you can, to go into cover. But you can, as any of the other classes, take advantage of this in a pinch. So you don't have to say, oh, you know what, I got to go for broke and kill him in melee. If you're about to die, escape, get behind cover. You can probably heal up enough to kind of prep you for that next push. So those are the three types of healing. And I have a feeling at least one of them you weren't sure about. So if this is the first time you've heard about that, make sure you leave a comment below and let me know. I would appreciate that. So those are the three types of healing. Final thing I want to point out before my final verdict, skilled and build diversity. A thing that the demo does really poorly is letting you experience differences because you're only going to get 2 nodes, as you can see here. This is the maximum you're going to get. In addition, it does a horrible job explaining what the descriptors are. Okay, so for example, you'll notice this ability here. Let me see here. Interrupts easy. This is probably not the best character to do it, but for example, the Pyromancer will say, apply an ash effect. And you're like, what? Now I looked it up some older videos and somebody had mentioned ash just basically kind of makes them immobile for a certain amount of time. But there's no tooltip here that tells you what ash is. There's no tooltip like burn. I'm assuming it's a dot over time. Freeze freezes. There's vulnerability, but it doesn't tell you how much vulnerability does. You know, are you taking extra damage? I'm assuming. Are you more likely to be impacted by like a status effect? It doesn't say. So that's something I wish they did a better job of. They throw this giant skill tree at you that you're only going to get access to 20 out of 30. But again, you don't get to really test it out. So if you're brand new and you're just jumping in, maybe you don't spend too much time here. Don't judge the game based on just the 4 classes and the lack of skill nodes that you have access to here, or talent nodes, whatever we want to call them. I think they call them the class point system here. I've theory crafted a lot, and there's a lot of options you're going to have. In fact, in my class videos, my deep dive videos, do check them out because I'm going to share with you my recommended starting builds for leveling from 1 to 30 on each of the classes that I feel will be highly effective and very user-friendly for beginners to help you get the most out of each and every class. Okay, so final verdict time. What do I think of Outriders? I think we need to have realistic expectations for it. I give it big kudos for not being live service. I think we're going to get a lot of content from this. It may be a little buggy. It's not going to be the most gorgeous game in the world. I will say the gearing system has a lot of potential. The skill system, the ability system, really lots of potential. We didn't get to try out crafting, for example. So there's systems that we haven't gotten to try. But the big thing you need to know is that the game is really, really fun to play mechanically, with the caveat being the cover system being a little wonky. So a lot of these games, they live and die on two things: mechanics and content. Okay. Now, something like Anthem had great mechanics, content was horrible. This game has a good story. It sounds like 25 to 30 hours or so. And then it's going to have that end game content built in of the expeditions that, again, you don't get to try out here, and kind of like the little extra end game super boss or whatever. I think that's for the money, going to give you ample bang for your buck. And again, the classes are all unique. They are all fun to varying degrees. So for me, thumbs up. I recommend you give the demo a try. And as long as you're not offended by any of the elements I mentioned or have really bad reactions to the shaky cam, etc., I say give it a try. If I were to predict what my scores, what the scores are going to be for this game, I'm guessing about 8.5 is what I feel the reviews will come back. Again, very preliminary, but I kind of have a feeling that's where it's going to score on like a 1 to 10 rating. So again, hope you guys found this video useful. Like and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. It's Leeroy with Leeroy Gaming, and I'm going to see you guys next time.